G'day folks and welcome to another episode of The Breakdown, the new and improved version for 2019, brought to you by New Step Brewing, where we're here filming today. Joining me as always, commentary regular Jay Moore Staunton, and our special guest today, Reds and Brothers' favourite son, Fraser McWright. How are we, gents?
Living the dream, Sauce.
Yeah, exactly. Keen to be here.
Now, Fraser, we thought we'd better get you in before we head off to Argentina for a month, mate. You were part of that 24-0 win over New Zealand with the junior Wallabies on the weekend, mate. How special was that?
Yeah, pretty special. I think, play for your country is one thing. That's awesome. But, to beat the Kiwis and to keep them scoreless, it's unbelievable. I don't think the side's done that in recent years. So to do that, it's awesome.
Now, mate, obviously, the Oceania tournament has taken place in Bond over the last couple of years, but traditionally it's got down to Australia and New Zealand, and the Kiwis have had the rub of the green heading into the World Cup for the last couple of years. What does that win mean for you guys heading into the Junior World Cup?
Yeah, it means everything. I think as a playing squad, we sort of had a couple of goals, the Oceania tournament, the Junior World Cup, and after it in terms of player performances and awards. But to tick off the Oceania with a good, tight group of lads and going into the Junior World Cup with all this confidence, I think it's a lot. We can take confidence in our structures and the players that we have. And moving forward against Italy, Ireland and England, I think they're teams that play good footy, sort of like New Zealand, and they sort of play similar to us. And we know that if we play our best footy, we can do some damage against them. So, yeah, awesome.
Awesome. Now, mate, I feel like you played a lot of footy with, both at the brothers level and obviously with the junior Wallabies. Harry Wilson obviously kills it on field, but off field, mate, you've been in camp the last couple of weeks. How big of a pest was he?
Oh, don't start, Harry bloody Wilson. No, he's I wouldn't say killing on the field, but no jokes. He has. No, he actually got our player as well. So against New Zealand, he's funny. He has his moments in camps. You get a bit off him, then you're on him again, and then you bit off him, then you're on him. But no, Wilson's our culture captain as well throughout the group, so he has a huge role to play in terms of how tight our group is, and it shows when we, can keep our New Zealand team scoreless, how close we are, and he has a big role in that. So Wilson's awesome to have in the team, and he was all right around camp. So
that bloke got culture captain. Right. Moving on from the 20 stuff, obviously a massive weekend of club footy in round 6. Let's kick things off with the match of the round between Souths and Bond, which saw the Magpies get up in a tight one, 25-20. Jay, you were obviously there at the game, mate. What were your thoughts?
It was a very slow first half, 5-3 at the half, up to Bond. But it started to dry up a little bit, and then both teams started to really click, and they actually were able to, despite the conditions, really open up their attack. Some end-to-end footy, and it seemed like the side that had the ascendancy was the one that eventually went backward. Evident by Joey Fiddick going coast to coast, and then Souths their kicking game bearing Bond down into their own red zone, and they were able to just release those pressure valves. So it was a very weird game, but I think Souths they're finally starting to click a little bit. I think Teddy Teller and Jake Strawn are really starting to work well as Ralphie Uvalu in that midfield. So they're really, really starting to fire. So whether or not they can keep consistent is one thing, but they've shown that they've got the talent.
And a bit of a weird one, mate. All the points for Souths came through their forwards.
Yeah, something that you don't typically see. But a lot of that as well was based around the attack of Souths. Jaden Armanu was awesome with his kicking game. Same with Jake Strawn. Teddy Teller was very smart, but they were still playing with a lot of width. But it was when they had to really buckle down, Souths actually did that. It's something we haven't seen from Souths in the opening 5 rounds or so. Harley Fox had his best game in Souths colours in the last year and a half. Brad Kelleguy really stepped up. So there was just a real sense of them actually understanding the conditions a bit better, being a bit more pragmatic about it, and nothing against Bond, but South just showed up a bit more on the day.
Fraser, fella that you've obviously spent a lot of time in training with the Reds, Teddy Teller, mate, you spent a bit of time playing against him in club footy. He had a couple of big plays in this game. How impressed have you been with his form this year?
Yeah, heaps. I think Teddy as a person, he's very kind, he's very gentle, but then you get him on the park, turns into a different beast. I think you can see that in the way he played on the weekend, starting and ultimately putting 2 big shots on to win the game against Bond, and that's huge. It just shows sort of the person and the player he is and what he brings to South.
Now, Jay, mate, as a former hooker yourself, mate, a fella I've been impressed with the last couple of weeks, wanted to get your thoughts on him. Theo Foree, the young fella at South coming out of Colts into that hooker role where they've got lacking a little bit of depth, but he stepped up on the weekend.
Yeah, I can't help but think that maybe David Pace has had a little bit to do with it. Very old head, and he seems to be he's obviously very experienced, but I think Theo Ferree seems to be very experienced for such a young player. You could still see a few deficiencies, but I think a lot of it came down to maybe just a bit of inexperience and stuff like that. But very good around the park, very mobile, and after the game, able to knock back one of those IPAs. Bloody good effort considering they're 2 standard drinks, bloody hell.
Yeah, I felt a bit sorry for the young fella with the boys getting stuck in U's who's trying to film sauce on the sidelines, but hats off to him.
That's fine.
Hopefully he enjoyed the rest of South's Ladies' Day. Now, in terms of the result, it was a really tight one there, and Bond had an opportunity to steal the win at the end. I really don't think Bond were that bad in the match. I just think that potentially their game plan was slightly off. I would have probably expected them to take it more up in the forwards, but it seemed that they were sort of looking to go that little bit wider. And obviously Joey fit off, made some meters and some inroads in different parts of the game, but I probably would have utilised their big forward pack a little bit more. What were your thoughts?
100%. You saw at the end of the game there, they had, phases were well into the double digits, if not pushing up past 20. And that's where they really should have backed themselves. They were looking really good, and that's where they were getting ascendancy. But I think Souths really dragged them into their game. They wanted to swing it early, straight off that first kickoff in the opening 10 seconds, and it might have just switched for Bond. Maybe we can do the same. But the kicking game of Souths was on, and their running game was on. Bond's kicking game was off, and their running game was off. So they needed to be a bit smarter with it, a bit more pragmatic, maybe keep it in tight, not give Souths the ball back. And they probably would have come away with a butter confection, but they're only 1 win this season. And so, for a team that is that good, it's not looking too good for them at the moment.
So moving on to our second match, East v West. Obviously the Tigers got up 29-21. Heading into this match, much like their game against Jeeps in round 2, I was a bit worried as a Tiger as to whether or not they'd have the firepower to get up and get the job done, but hats off to the boys. They came out, played well, got the job done. What were your thoughts on that game, Jay?
Yeah, look, I thought the Doggies could have gotten up. 2 teams that play very similar brands of footy, but it was curtains by half-time. 15-0 at the break. Matt Gordon firing. Preston Springhall, the 4th-string fly half, standing up very well. They just blew them off the park too early, and the Doggies just took 60 minutes to respond, and you can't do that against a side that talented. The final scoreline was flattering, but the Doggies were never really in it. But that said, the Tigers are looking good, and they're only just waiting for Jack Frampton to come back, so think about how good they're going to be when he comes back.
Yeah, well, whispers are, mate, he could be lining up this weekend, which would be exciting for their clash against Norths.
Stinger.
Now, mate, you mentioned Matt Gordon there. Fraser, you obviously spent some time with him in the Brisbane City squad last year, mate. What do you make of Matty, mate, and just the impact that he can have on a game for the Tigers?
Yeah, you look what he does for East, and let alone Brisbane City last year. He's just a destructive, running the ball sort of centre. He breaks tackles, plays sort of like what Simon does with the Reds. He breaks tackles, and you see his try on the weekend set up with a nice little kick grabber on the sideline, nice little inball to him, scored. So I think he has nice touches here and there, but he also has a destructive running game that no centre in the comp has. So I think he's a real asset for Easts, and hopefully that they can sort of keep using him throughout the year.
I suppose with the other team there, mate, you've also played a lot of footy with the West young guns, mate. Talk us through some of those fellas and how impressed you've been with their opening few rounds.
Yeah, exactly. I played with Carter at the moment at the Reds. He's been killing it, learning his trade quietly, behind all the rest of the boys. And you just see the performances he's been putting in with West. First year out of school, unbelievable as well. And then you have boys like Zachy Henry, I think made 26 from 26 conversions. Same sort of thing, like working his way through a Colts program at West and uni, and then coming through and killing it. I played a lot of footy also with Hunter Pasami at Oz Schoolboys, and you know how destructive he is. Ball hitting, tackle crunching centre. And with those 3 at your 10, 12, 13, you're going to win most games. So I think if they keep up with their form, they'll be definitely a top 4 sort of contender this year. So hopefully they keep their form up and keep playing well.
Yeah, no, they've been very impressive, the young guys at West, but we saw in that game against Jeeps 2 weeks ago that they really got tested in the scrum, the Bulldogs forward packs. And Jay, it happened once again, mate. The East boys went to work there. Yeah,
early on it was very even, but as the game wore on, and I think Big Aussie and Missy started to fatigue a little bit, they started to, Carter and Reece Van Neck started to get under him a little bit. And it's just such a strong attacking weapon for the Tigers. And I think if the Doggies do want to be a top 4 side that can compete for that Hospital Challenge Cup, they are going to have to work on their set piece. They have done it, and it is much better than where it was over the last season or two. But teams need to have a good set piece to be able to win the entire competition. If they can't do that, it could be hard come the pointy end of the season. But I think the Tigers should show that that set piece is a very dominating force for it.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Tigers set piece over the next month or so, because big Reece Van Neck at tight head prop, you and I have obviously been fans of him. His form has been rewarded. He's been called into this Aussie Under-20 squad to head off to the Junior World Cup. So hats off to Reece, good on him. It'll be interesting to see depth-wise what the Tigers do. I know Braden Schiller, who you guys might remember from the Reds Under-20s back in 2017. He's back from England after a bit of a sojourn over there. So it'll be interesting to see how he slots in. But we'll see how they go against Norths this weekend. Now, moving on to the third match. Probably no surprises here. The Gallopers getting up over Norths 38-12, Jack.
Actually, I think Norths were much better than the scoreline represents. I know they only got that try late in the half and it was already well past them. But they stayed in the game pretty well. Jeeps are just way too classy and their scrum just absolutely decimated the poor Norths boys. But I think they play really good footy when they can unleash their back line. Early on, they were taking it to the Jeeps defensive line and they were looking for those offloads. And they started to unleash guys like Matty McGann and Connor Chittenden and so on. And once they can do that, they look really good. But Jeeps, they've found their form and they are absolutely firing.
Yeah, they've been looking sharp. And one of our probably pre-season pickups that we spoke about, DP DeLonga, he came back into the starting lineup this week and looked good at fly half. Yeah,
that pass he gave, I think, to John O'Kent was a bit of a miracle pill and it came off, but he was really good, especially considering last week when Davis Tavita came back and he showed that he was playing some real good footy too. To have him dumped into that 10 role and to handle it so well was really good because he was a little off the boil in the first couple of weeks after starring in that Australian Club Championship. So for him to have a really good game and he can absolutely shoot the lights out with the boot was really good. And I think if him and DT can have a bit of a partnership and a healthy rivalry going on at 10 there, that could be just the steering of the ship that they need.
And another fellow that's been on fire for the Gallopers, you played a lot of footy against him last year and obviously were in the city squad with him, Matty Jekyll. How impressed have you been with him this year, mate?
Yeah, heaps. I think, he scored a double early in the year against East and now another one against Norths. Just shows how huge his work rate is. He's a very fit bloke, very quick, and, he can wax bloke. So I think he's a very special player and, if Chiefs want to go all the way this year, which they won't because Brothers will win, he's a very important player. So, hopefully he keeps playing, his good sort of footy and, finds form and keeps his form. And hopefully big things to come for Matty Jigger.
And Jay, another fella that you and I were very impressed with last year, Josh Collins. He came to that grand final side for the Gallopers and killed it. Saw him playing third grade back in round 2 against East. I think that was purely down to work commitments. He's back in Prem grade, but we didn't see any tries from him on the weekend.
No, he's an absolute speed demon. That's one thing he's got in spades, and it is speed. If he was at another club, he'd be hitting double digits in regards to tries every single year, but he's at Jeeps where they play a really forward-oriented game and their wingers don't really get the accolades that wingers would at every other club. But he's definitely going to be someone that they can really utilise against some of those sides if they can get in those fringes and unleash him because he is a freak.
So, moving on to the fourth game, UQ versus Sunnybank. Obviously, the students got up here 40-10, probably the biggest scoreline than we expected, Jay.
Yeah, I've got to agree. I didn't expect it to be that much of a win. I actually thought Sunnybank had the better team on paper, but there's something going on there at Sunnybank where they just don't seem to be able to click. They don't seem to be able to really put performances together. A week ago against Brothers, they were actually quite good. This week, that second half, they just really switched off and Uni were able to run away with it. But I think Uni need to be very wary. I think they played a Sunnybank side that didn't really show up, especially in that second half. So very good win for Uni, but it's looking pretty bad for Sunnybank, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think you're right there, Jay. And obviously, a key fella for UQ, James Dalglish. Obviously, we've seen his form over the last couple of years in club rugby. In a year, Fraser, where the students are really having to pull on the depth of the club, see different guys in different positions that we haven't seen in years gone by. How important is it to have a guy like Jimmy Dalglish at fly half steering the ship?
Yeah, it's very important. You know, I think if you get James in his current form, which he's been playing, I think, the past 4 years when they've been in the grand finals, you can sort of rely on him to do that and push them in the top four and keep them there. But also on the other flip side of that, you don't want James to kind of keep the ship going and the other boys kind of relying on the Reds boys coming back after their season's done to get him that top four. So I think with James, it's very important that he can keep the boys going and motoring along and keep pushing them into the top four contenders, which they are. But the current crop need to acknowledge that and realise that and actually do it. So it's very important to James to keep ticking along.
And Jay, another fella that we've seen come back from the Aussie Sevens program the last couple of weeks, Liam McNamara at fullback. What have you made of his return to clubland?
Really, really good. A lot of the time, Sevens players, when they transition back in that 15s game, can take a while to find their feet. But he's really inserted himself well, and it's a bit more experience in that back line that's got some new faces and so on. So I think he's teaming up really well with his brother at halfback there, who's an absolute gun. And if they can get Tommy Lucas back and really start to form some partnerships, they could be really good. But they need to make sure that they set a platform up front for them to be able to unleash those guys.
Yeah, I really think it's going to come down to the Sunnybank forward pack coming together and actually laying that platform, as you said, for the backline to be unleashed, as well as the McNamara boys. They've also got Hayden Sargent there. You mentioned Tommy Lucas. Then you've got other talented fellas there as well, like Larry Hermans in the backline too. So should things start to click for Sunnybank, you mentioned they were probably the better team on paper heading into that clash against UQ. Should they click, they really should, potentially maybe cause some upsets at the back end of Premier Rugby later this year. So moving on to round 7 matches, obviously another big weekend of club footy ahead of us. We got North v East up at Hugh Courtney. Fraser, thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think I might be backing North because my good mate Matty McGann. You know Matty quite well, has been in here all year about North and East at the trial match beginning of the year, so he's tipping buddy upset on the card. So what are your thoughts there, Saucy?
Look, credit where credit's due. The Eagles are on the improve. Matty's been playing good footy, good inclusion for them there at 10. But if the Eagles beat the Tigers this weekend, I'll eat me bloody hat. Jay, obviously a really crucial game for Bond and West down at the Canal. The two sides are both hunting for points as we reach the midway point of the season. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's a weird match of footy. Bond, I don't think, deserve to be down the bottom end of the table just by way of their results. I think they're actually a lot like West last year, who lost, I think, 7 or 8 matches by less than 7 points. And they're in the same mould, just not getting the final deed done. Whereas the Doggies could go 3 losses in a row after really dominating early on in the season. So I think I'm going to back the Doggies here just because I'm a doggy myself, but that's going to be a close match of footy.
So Sunnybank v GPS at Old Mac Oval. Jay, this one's probably a pretty easy match to pick a winner.
Big time Jeeps by 1,000. Best forward pack in the competition up against probably the worst. Jeeps are just going to strangle them out of the game, not give them an opportunity to unleash their back line, which they haven't really been able to do all season either way. And I think Jeeps will absolutely pump them.
Fair enough. And another match where we could potentially see a scoreline blowout, Brothers v UQ. Obviously, the two sides heading into this game are probably in different form, but it's an age-old rivalry, Fraser. How much will the Brothers boys get up for a clash against the students?
Oh, huge. I think, to play uni age-old rivalry at Brothers, old boy day as well, I think. So everyone will be down there cheering the mighty Filth on. There's only one winner in reality, which is the mighty Filth. So,
jeez, that's got to be a fair mob.
So hopefully, if the Brothers boys, with the mighty Butchery in the corner cheering them on, I don't think there's any other way we're going to not win. So it's going to be a good day down at Crosby.
Looking forward to this one as much as the round, but a key thing for the brethren, mate, how do they cover the loss of yourself, Woody, and obviously Wilso, mate, in that back row combo?
So it's different. I think for the start of the round, Woody missed the first sort of 2 games. I didn't play until the West, I think, so the 4th game. And so they've done really well without us. The big one, obviously, is Wilso. So, the great thing about Brothers is we have great depth, and we proved that last year with the Doherty Shield, and again this year with I think 4 out of 6 or 5 out of 6 grades, not losing a match this year so far. So we have great depth at the club, and the boys will come through and they've earned their opportunity, and they'll showcase it in front of a great crowd against Uni.
All right, folks, that's it for another episode of The Breakdown. Thanks for joining me, Jay and Fraser.
All right, thanks for having me, lads.
You love it, Sauce.
As always, mate. All right, folks, round 7 of the Newstead Brewing Hospital Challenge Cup kicks off this Saturday. Make sure you get out and support your club. But if you can't make it to a game, don't worry, we've got you covered with all 4 games streamed live and free via redsrugby.com.au. In the meantime, stay tuned for more content via the Facebook page.
Up the filth.